Munich, winter of 1976. The wind slammed against the windows of BMW's motorsport department. In a dimly lit office, Jochen Neupasch placed a piece of paper on his desk. Scrawled across it were 3 bold letters, M88. But this wasn't just a project code, it was a manifesto. Despite BMW's recent racing successes with the 3.0 CSL, it still lived in the shadow of motorsport giants like Porsche, Ferrari, and Cosworth. Neupasch had a bold vision: to create an engine that would redefine BMW's place in automotive history, something that wouldn't just compete, but completely outclass its rivals on both road and track. To bring this dream to life, he chose Paul Roche, a brilliant and discreet engineer known for pulling impossible performance out of ordinary engine blocks. Roche accepted, not realizing he was about to build a legend. Work on the M88 began in complete secrecy. No press releases, no flashy presentations. Just a closed room, a chalkboard, and a small team of engineers. Their goal? A naturally aspirated inline-6 engine with 3.5 liters of displacement, capable of breathing like a V12 and screaming past 9,000 RPM in race spec. They started with the M30 block, but everything else was re-engineered. The head was made from lightweight aluminum with 4 valves per cylinder, a rarity in Europe at the time. Dual overhead camshafts and mechanical fuel injection from Kugelfischer allowed the engine to perform reliably at high RPMs. This was a bold move when most European manufacturers were still using 2-valve, single-cam, carbureted engines. Critics said the M88 was too complex, too expensive, and too ambitious. Roche didn't care. He wanted an engine that sang, loud, free, and without compromise. But a masterpiece needs a stage. That stage would be the BMW M1, a supercar built to meet Group 4 racing homologation standards. Designed by Giugiaro and originally scheduled for production at Lamborghini, the M1 project was almost doomed from the start. Delays, factory issues, and even prototype fires pushed everything off schedule. In a desperate move, Neupasch launched the ProCar series, a one-make championship that would run as a support series to Formula One races, with identical M1s handed over to top drivers like Niki Lauda, Nelson Piquet, and Alan Jones. Under their right foot was the M88-1, an engine pushing 477 horsepower, doing 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in under 5 seconds, and howling with a mechanical scream that bordered on animalistic. The paddock was stunned. A motor once thought too wild and unstable was now the center of attention. Niki Lauda once said, "This engine is so linear, it feels like a V12, but it punches like a V8." But behind the triumph was a fragile reality. The M88 was a masterpiece balanced on a knife's edge. It was powerful, but its tolerance was razor thin. In the summer of 1979, 3 engines failed during private testing. The cause was consistent: harmonic resonance in the valve springs at certain RPM ranges. Not dramatic explosions, but tiny fractures and wear that crept in after just a few hours of use. Roche ordered a full vibration analysis. The engineers found that certain mid-range RPMs produced destructive harmonics, the kind that could only be identified with specialized equipment. Solutions were tested: adjusting valve spring tension, tweaking camshaft profiles, and experimenting with different alloys. But time was short. The ProCar series ran every weekend, and the engines had to keep running. Tension grew. The engineers demanded redesigns, while management insisted on meeting deadlines. BMW's reputation was on the line every Sunday. Another issue emerged: heat. On tracks like Monaco and Dijon, high ambient temperatures led to noticeable power loss after just 15 to 20 laps. The mechanical Kugelfischer injection system, while excellent in cool conditions, started drifting at high temps. Roche suggested a radical solution: switch to electronic fuel injection. It was modern, accurate, and more heat tolerant, but adapting the electronics to such a high-strung engine required time. Time they didn't have. By 1980, the M88 was at its peak and most vulnerable. Every win came with anxiety. Every race start was a silent prayer. Neupasch knew this couldn't last. The engine had to evolve. It needed to become something more than a race machine. It needed to live on the street. The ProCar series was canceled in 1981, a victim of scheduling conflicts, FIA politics, and BMW's failure to get the M1 homologated in time. Yet the M88 survived. Some wanted to abandon it. Too expensive, too complex, too fragile for road use. But a few visionaries at BMW saw an opportunity. Bring this racing heart to a grand tour, the 6 Series E24. The result would be the M635 CSI. But adapting the M88 to civilian life wasn't easy. Cold starts were rough, city driving was harsh, and the mechanical injection was too unstable for daily use. The solution? Full Bosch Motronic electronic injection. With that, the engine became smoother, cleaner, and more drivable. Compression was lowered, cam profile softened, and the red line dropped to 6,900 RPM. Power fell to 286 horsepower, but usability skyrocketed. The M635 CSI became an Autobahn missile, capable of 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in under 5 seconds, and topping 250 kilometers an hour, all with 4 seats and a real trunk. BMW wasn't done. Someone had the audacity to suggest putting this engine into a sedan, the E28 5 Series. It sounded insane at the time. A race engine in a family car? But in 1985, it happened. The first BMW M5 was born. From the outside, it looked like a standard executive car. But under the hood was a power plant sharing 80% of its DNA with the M1 ProCar. The press was stunned. No production car had ever been this deceptive, this civilized, and this fast. The M5 could dust off a 911 SC while carrying your kids and luggage. It redefined what a sedan could be. But greatness had a cost. The M88 in road trim, now known as the M88-3, was still temperamental. It demanded careful maintenance, hated poor fuel, and didn't cope well with traffic jams. Some owners complained of timing chain noise, rare parts, and mechanics unfamiliar with such an exotic engine. BMW had to roll out emergency training sessions to keep dealerships from misdiagnosing the car. And yet, the magic remained. The M88 wasn't built for everyone. It wasn't about comfort or ease. It was about passion, precision, and performance. It was a reminder that mechanical excellence always comes with a price, and those willing to pay it were rewarded with one of the finest engines BMW ever created. By 1987, the M88 was officially retired. The M1 was gone, and the E28 M5 was nearing its end. The M88-3, despite its prestige, would be replaced by more practical, mass-friendly engines. It seemed like the era of race-bred engines in road cars was over, until one unexpected request came from Britain. Gordon Murray, former Brabham F1 designer, was looking for an engine. Not just any engine, but one worthy of powering the greatest supercar the world had ever seen. He had a crazy dream to build the greatest road car in history. A lightweight machine with no electronic aids, no gimmicks, just pure mechanical brilliance. A car capable of hitting 370 kilometers per hour, relying solely on precision engineering. That dream became the McLaren F1. Gordon Murray knocked on many doors. Ferrari said no. Porsche, Toyota, even Honda, none had an engine that met his demands. They were all either too heavy, too turbocharged, or simply not reliable enough for his vision. Frustrated, he picked up the phone and called Munich. Paul Roche, he said, I need a naturally aspirated V12, no more than 250 kilograms. It has to rev to 7,500 RPM and make at least 550 horsepower, and absolutely no turbos. Roche paused, then smiled. What if we do better than 550? He replied. BMW accepted. But there was a catch. BMW had no production V12 that could deliver those specs. So Roche decided to start from scratch. And he turned to what he knew best, the M88. Using it as a conceptual base, he widened the cylinder angle, doubled the bank count, and began crafting a new legend. The result was the S70/2, a 6.1-liter, naturally aspirated V12 producing 627 horsepower and 650 Newton-meters of torque. It would become the most advanced road-going engine of its time. Every part was machined with tolerances inspired by Formula One. It was tested under extreme temperatures, low atmospheric pressure, and at steep incline angles to simulate legendary corners like Spa's Eau Rouge. No filters, no turbos, no compromises. Even the oiling system was redesigned using a dry sump layout, directly borrowed from motorsport, to prevent oil starvation during intense cornering. The McLaren F1 debuted in 1992, smashing all expectations, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 3.2 seconds, a top speed of 386.4 kilometers per hour, the fastest production car in the world at the time. And it did it all without turbos, without AWD, and without semi-automatic gearboxes. Just a featherweight chassis and a monster of a naturally aspirated V12. The S70/2 wasn't just powerful, it was refined. Smooth at low revs, savage at high revs, and so reliable that it could be driven from Paris to Milan without a hint of overheating. But at its core was a 15-year-old soul. The DNA of the M88 lived on, even if BMW never officially acknowledged it. Too many changes, too many new parts. BMW rarely claimed a direct lineage, but for those who worked on it, the connection was obvious. The same bore spacing, the same engineering mindset, the same obsession with throttle response and naturally aspirated power. It was the modular, overbuilt nature of the M88 that made this dream engine possible. It helped BMW break through the limits of conventional production to create something that would live on as a monument to engineering freedom. A German engine at the heart of a British icon. It wasn't an accident. In a world rushing toward electronics and forced induction, Gordon Murray sought purity, and he found it in Munich. In 1995, powered by that BMW V12, the McLaren F1 reshaped the supercar landscape. It humbled Italian exotics and proved that BMW's engineering, even outside its own lineup, could dominate the very top of the automotive pyramid. Back in Munich, though, things were changing. Emissions regulations were tightening. The market demanded smoother, cheaper, and more efficient engines. The era of race-bred naturally aspirated engines for the road was coming to an end. The M88 was retired, shelved, archived. And yet, its legacy lived on. Every generation of the BMW M3, every M5, every engine wearing the S prefix, from the S38 to the S85, bore the fingerprints of the M88. The E34 M5, for instance, featured a modernized version of the M88 called the S38B36, still naturally aspirated, still high revving, and still built for purists who rejected the simplicity of turbocharging. Then came the E39 M5 with the S62, a naturally aspirated V8 with double Venos and a redline near 7,000 RPM. Smoother, more refined, but still carrying the spirit of the M88, a machine engineered not just for speed, but for driver engagement. Then came perhaps the boldest homage, the S85 V10 in the E60 M5. 10 cylinders, 8,250 RPM, 507 horsepower, and no turbo. A mechanical swan song in a world already being overtaken by forced induction. Its creators openly admitted that its architecture drew inspiration from the M88, only pushed to the extreme. Even BMW's modern bi-turbo engines, laced with electronics and efficiency tricks, inherit some of that M88 character. Their linear power delivery, their high-speed stability, their responsiveness, all trace back to the blueprint Paul Roche laid out in 1976. Because an M engine isn't just about raw power, it's about connection, precision, the ability to turn throttle input into immediate visceral feedback. And that's the true legacy of the M88, not just in parts, but in philosophy. A radical approach to performance, a refusal to compromise, a relentless drive for mechanical coherence. Through highs and lows, BMW M has never fully let go of that origin. Even today, on forums, in car clubs, in garages, the name M88 still inspires awe. Some remember the sound, others the razor-sharp throttle, but all agree on one thing. This engine was never supposed to exist. It broke every rule. It ignored cost efficiency. It defied mass production logic. It existed because a few engineers insisted it should, and that changed everything. 45 years after its birth, the M88 no longer roars down racetracks or shakes paddock windows, but it's more alive than ever, because the M88 wasn't just an engine. It was an idea. The idea that a car company could take an insane risk, that a race engine could survive on the road without losing its soul, that one engineer's vision could override corporate caution and be right. This engine was born out of gentle rebellion, pure passion, and crafted one part at a time to become a statement. And it embodied that rupture with convention every second of its mechanical life. It challenged the dominance of the Cosworth DFV in engineers' imaginations. It propelled the McLaren F1 to the top of history. It turned a quiet sedan into an Autobahn weapon, and it planted a technical culture at BMW M that still lingers today. Some might call it a dinosaur in a world of 8-speed autos and twin-turbo SUVs, but they'd be wrong. The M88 is a reminder that mechanical perfection isn't measured in price or horsepower, but in coherence. That pure emotion often comes from projects that can't be justified on paper, and that some machines endure not by lasting the longest, but by being impossible to forget. In a world of standardized engines, the M88 remains unique, wild, and just barely tamed. And maybe that's its greatest achievement of all.